Do you have swelling in your legs, ankles, or feet? Well, then this video is for you. I'm going to be sharing with you why they might be swelling and remedies that work. But as always, before you follow any advice from any video, check with your healthcare provider to make sure it's appropriate for your specific condition. And hopefully that's one of us here at Drummond Chiropractic, especially if you have any kind of swelling, because it could be a sign of a serious condition. And what might that serious condition be? If your left leg is swelling more than your right leg, it could be a sign of a heart condition. And then there's pitting edema. This is swelling that when you put your finger and press on the skin, it leaves a pit, an indentation that doesn't fill up quickly. Pitting edema could be a sign of a more serious condition. Conditions like deep vein thrombosis, congestive heart failure, kidney disease, cirrhosis of the liver. This is why it's very important that you see a healthcare provider if you have any kind of swelling, especially pitting edema. And swelling can be remedied by simply elevating your feet or wearing compression socks. More serious cases may need a diuretic. This is something that helps you pee so that you get rid of that extra fluid. But there's also a lymphatic drainage technique that really works, and I'm going to share with you how to do that. But before I share with you how to do that, it's important that you know some anatomy, because the more you understand your body, the better you're able to treat it. Now, most people understand that we have a circulatory system. You have a heart that pumps blood out through arteries that go into smaller vessels called arterioles and then break down into these little vessels called capillaries. And that's where there's a transfer of nutrients from the blood and oxygen from the blood into the tissue. Oxygen leaves the blood through diffusion. The cells that hold the oxygen, called red blood cells, are red when they carry oxygen, and when they release the oxygen, they turn blue. During the transfer of the nutrients, the red blood cells stay in the vessel of the capillary bed, and the oxygen diffuses from the red blood cell through the walls and into the tissue where the cells in the tissue can get that oxygen. And as the oxygen leaves the red blood cell, it turns blue. And that's why your arteries have red blood, but if you look at your veins, they look more blue because they are deficient in oxygen. And for your food to get to the cells, the nutrients flow with fluid. Fluid literally leaves your bloodstream and gets into the tissue in between the cells, and then the nutrients get absorbed by the cells. And then the cells release their waste into this fluid. And a lot of that fluid makes it back into the vessels in the capillary beds, back into the bloodstream, where then it goes back to the heart through the veins, and it gets cleaned out by your organs like the kidneys and the spleen and the liver. But not all that fluid makes it back into the bloodstream. This excess fluid gets taken up by the lymphatic system. Now, these vessels don't have a heart to pump that fluid back up the body. And when it comes to your legs and your feet, that's a long way to go to come up all the way up your legs and torso into the bloodstream at the subclavicular vein. And since it doesn't have a heart to pump it all the way back up, it utilizes a propulsion of the vessels. There's muscles on the vessel walls that work the fluid back up, and there are one-way valves that stop it from flowing backwards, back down the body. It also gets helped by the muscles of your body contracting and relaxing. If you are sitting there or standing still, can you see how that's going to tax the lymphatic system? It's going to have a lot more downward pressure on those valves, and over time they can actually fail and cause a backwash of fluid, so you're more prone to a swelling of the legs, ankles, and feet, because once that valve breaks, it can't hold that fluid up anymore, and you get more backflow down into the legs. Can you see how an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? If you keep the body moving and avoid sitting or standing too long, you're going to keep these vessels healthier. And that's part of the reason why I'm a big fan of doing self-lymphatic drainage on a daily basis to really keep the pressure off the system. And bonus, this helps the veins too, because yes, the circulatory has a heart, but like the vessels of the lymphatic system, the veins have one-way valves to stop the backflow because the heart is more effective at getting the blood out. And then as it's further away and after the blood leaves the capillary beds, the pressure is less, so it's important to get the body assisting in getting the blood flowing away from the tissues. And when vessel valves break, there's a backwash of blood, and as we know, there's red blood cells in the blood, and in the veins it's blue. And you may know these broken blood vessels where the valve's broken as varicosities, because they're more visible than the lymphatic system. When they fail, that fluid is clear, and you typically see that as swelling. So if you have a job that involves a lot of sitting or a lot of standing, it's really important to wear compression hose. When it comes to compression socks, you have to be careful that they're not putting too much pressure below the knee, because there are lymph nodes there, and if you put pressure right below them, they can become quite tender as the fluid builds up in that area. So if you wear compression socks, I'm not a fan of the ones that go right below the knee, either like shorter ones or wearing full-on hose. So now that you understand the lymphatic system a little better, let's teach you how to massage it. How do we milk this tenderizing metabolic waste out of the body? By using strokes that help the flow. So if you're just thinking of the muscles, you might just rub up and down because you're not thinking about how to help the metabolic waste drain out of the muscles. With this technique, you're going to help the muscles relax and you're going to help the lymph flow. You can use tools that you should have already in your house, like a rolling pin, or you could just use your hands. I'm going to start with the feet. So for the feet, you want to start distal, which would be the tip of your toes, and you can milk the metabolic waste up the toe and up the foot. You can do each individual toe, and then you can act like your foot's a rag, that you're literally wringing out the metabolic waste. And this also helps mobilize the joints in the feet. And then you can do a heel squeeze to help pump out the metabolic waste. Then you can go up the leg. Notice how I'm doing a wringing type action with my hands. Use a pressure where you're feeling it massaging. Use a pressure that you can feel a good pain, but not a bad pain. And what I mean by that is you can usually tell that, oh, that's a good pressure, it's doing some therapy, but it's not so much pressure that it's causing a bruising type sensation. You might even find a knot in your muscle, and if you do, you can hold on to that muscle and breathe for 3 breaths. And as you feel it release and getting less tender, then you can let go. And again, use a pressure that feels like it's doing something, but not bruising you. Bruising is not conducive to healing. You could also use a rolling pin. And again, starting distal, you put some pressure and you roll up the tissue. You have lymph nodes in the inside of your knee. You might find some tender spots there. If you do, don't rub it. You don't want to irritate the lymph node. Just press and release. And then again, you can go up the thigh with the rolling pin. And then to do the outside of the leg, you got to watch the health of your knee. If that's too hard on your knee, you can have your knee up. And you have a bone on your shin. You don't want to be rubbing on your bone. Go off to the side of the bone. Make sure you're on the meat of the lower leg. You do the outside of the thigh, inside of the thigh. And then you have lymph nodes in the groin area that you just press release. Now I find this is easier to work if you're laying down. And for the back, it doesn't matter if you're stroking up or down because the metabolic waste goes from the outside in. So just putting pressure on the back is going to help drain the metabolic waste. I like to use a foam roller to help massage the back. You don't want to do the low back when it comes to a foam roller because you don't want to hyperextend the back. So I like to go where the middle of the back ends, where the curve goes from the lordotic curve to the kyphotic curve, supporting your head and then arching back. That'll help stretch the spine. And then you roll down a little bit to stretch the spine a little higher. And then you roll down a little bit more to get a good release for that upper back. This is good for those that sit at the computer too much or slouch. And then to massage the lymph, you just raise the buttocks up and go up and down your spine just like that. And another way to drain the lymph from your extremities is putting your feet up in the air and drawing the alphabet. That way you don't have to worry about remembering inversion, eversion. You just think about A, B, C and go all the way to Z. You do each leg, and that'll help not just drain the lymph, but stretch your hamstrings. And then for your hands, same thing, putting your hands up in the air and just moving them around, opening and closing your wrists. And that's a good way to pump the lymph out of the extremities. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments below. Until next time, stay well.